On to source control.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you,
not me.
Okay. All of you are working with source code. If you've worked as a software developer in the past, you know version control is very important. And there are, as a FHIR IG, it's more than just keeping track of the XML. I've won a prize. Several versions you need to worry about. Okay, obviously, which FHIR version you're working with, whether that is R4, R3, R2, R5. The version of your IG, which when you go for first publication is version 1, but is for your first STU is 0.1. And optionally, the version of what you're dependent on. For example, US Core. US Core R4 is currently version 3 of its IG. It's about to come out with version 3.01 or 3.1, I'm not sure which. Yes?
Explain to me the versioning on FHIR IGs, because I still don't understand.
Actually, I have that. I will get to that in just a minute. You don't really need to worry about the version of FHIR because that should be obvious. If you're going for version 4, you should go for version 4. If you're going for R5, go for R5. If you're going for STU2, I don't know why you would, but if you are, you list that in your resource and things will be magically handled. If you're dependent on US Core, well, they have a matching version for which release of FHIR they're using, plus they have the build site, plus, you know, if they do an STU update, there's that. And you want to make sure you're on the right version. You will publish your IG to a specific version of US Core if you're dependent on that. I just had to go through this because, of course, one of the ones I work on is dependent on US Core, and they're going through an STU. And if you want to update it so that yours is in line with the updated version, that is an update to yours and needs to go through the process again. All right, so it's important to keep track of the versions, not only of yours, but all the dependencies up the chain. Now, your IG's version is dependent on your development. It's yours. Congratulations. Typically, you'll use 0.10 as your development initial comment period. So for comments for STU1, it's 0.1. For comments for STU, for second comment valid, 0.2 or 0.1. It moves on and on. Second comment valid is true. When you're done all your validating comment resolutions and you're ready to publish your STU1, congratulations, you've hit version 1. Then you get comments back on that. That breaks everything. You are in version 1.01 or 1.1, depending on how much of a break it is. When you update it for STU2, it's version 2. Or if you go to R5, it'll be version 2. Or it's, I don't know, is there hard and fast rules on exact versioning? I've never seen them anywhere. Graham, Lloyd?
Well, what happens when you go to normative? What do you get then? Oh, so you're just incrementing up?
Yeah.
We do not start again. We do not start versions
It's very
again.
confusing, it's very different from
Yes.
CDA version.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we have mixed versions, so FHIR has some normative and some not normative stuff. It would have been totally confusing to the community to say, okay, we now have some normative content, so we're starting over again at 1. That would not have been good for the community. So we said we're just going to keep incrementing. So once you go to STU, where you're expecting people to implement, that's when your version numbering starts at 1, and it's going to continue to increment from that point forward.
Okay, so there's no way by looking at the version number and knowing if you've done a normative.
No,
No.
it should be on the header saying it's normal,
Yeah.
but that's the only way.
And the reality is that you can have mixed content in your implementation guide. So there might be some content in the implementation guide that is normative, other content that is STU, and other content that is still draft.
Oh, I've got the mic. I need some. I don't have a mic. Who's got all the mics? There we go.
So when do you use the third digit?
That's Lloyd. There we go.
So the first digit indicates a major release, so major new functionality, new capability, or hey, we have an IG that actually exists as a real thing. The second digit is sort of more minor changes. So if you fix something or add a small new feature, but that doesn't really cause significant break with what has existed previously, then it's a change to the minor version, and the last digit is for technical corrections. So if you go in and fix a bunch of spelling errors and grammar and formatting stuff, but do not change the functional expectations of the implementation guide at all, then you increment the last digit. So we have done last digit increments on the core specification for most releases. We're going to be doing one for R4 soon. We've never done a second digit increment for the core specification, but I believe that what they're doing for US core right now is going to be one of those.
Yeah, I believe it's actually going for 3.1
Yeah.
because
So-
there's actually a small functionality changes.
Yeah, so it would actually change how implementers work, but it's not a significant refactoring of what the IG does. It's just, hey, this particular piece turned out to be broken, so we need to fix it, but we're not changing anything else.
Yeah. So the STU here has nothing to do with the previous use of the term STU that we had for FHIR, right? The
Yeah, there's the standard for trial use.
So that's what I find confusing. So it means the same, but it has no connection to the whether we're using FHIR STU2. It has nothing to do with it, right?
So, sorry. Every specification that gets published has its own standards status. So your implementation guide might be STU. The content that your implementation guide is profiling might also be STU or might be normative. The only relationship there is that generally speaking, you can't have a normative IG or normative content in your IG that depends on STU content in the core specification or in other dependent IGs. So if you have an IG that's dependent on US core, which is dependent on FHIR, then you need the FHIR content to go normative and the US core content to go normative before your content can go normative.
Okay, so my confusion was yes there because yes and standard for FHIR, but this is no longer standard.
Implementation guide is absolutely a standard.
Okay.
From HL7's perspective, an implementation guide is just as much a standard as the core spec. They're different levels in the standards space in terms of what they're trying to do, but they are absolutely standards. Yeah,
Okay,
and they will go to ANSI.
next question.
So yeah, I think just a clarification to make sure I'm totally understanding. So the actual number following for the implementation guide version has no dependency whatsoever on the FHIR dependencies, on the FHIR version, right?
No, your versions are local to you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a mess because you can have a situation where I am publishing STU release 2 of my IG, which is dependent on STU 3 of release of US core, which is dependent on R4 of the core specification. And you can have dependencies where my IG is dependent on 3 different IGs. If anybody has a really brilliant way of communicating that in a non-confusing way to the community, we would love to hear it because we haven't figured one out.
Yeah, that's one of the great mysteries and going to be one of the interesting things going down the line. Graham, did you have something you want to say? Or? All right. Now, you've heard a couple of people talk about FMM, FHIR maturity model, and that level 2 in order to go to STU. Just wanted to go through what the FMMs actually are. There's actually 6 levels, or 7 levels, because there is FFM 0, which means this is a great idea, we should do that. FFM 1 means the build process works, and the WG says, yeah, okay, it's substantially complete. And of course, that the FMG said, yeah, you can do that. FMM2, which pretty much everybody in this room is going to have to worry about, that means that you've tested it at Connectathon or at your own private Connectathon using at least 3 independently developed systems. That doesn't mean you can have one company develop 3 systems and test them in amongst themselves and say, good enough, that's cheating. It does have to be independently developed systems. FMM3, verified by the work group as meeting the conformance, resource quality guidelines, and I'm not going to go into those because they're really quite exciting. But it's been through a round of formal balloting and has at least 10 implementer comments from at least 3 organizations, and that one substantive change has happened. So they're not all typos, right? You've actually made a change based on community feedback. 4, tested across its scope, published in a formal publication as an STU, implemented in multiple prototype projects. So you've got at least a few test implementations. You're ready. Sorry, I'm blanking on what the phrase is. It's still morning, right? FMM5, it's been published in 2 formal publication release cycles at STU level and has been implemented in at least 5 production systems. That's not draft, that's not tests, that's production. So people are using this in the real world. And finally, our FM6, responsible work group with FG says, everybody says this is great. It's normative, all the dependencies are normative, there's normative all around. Congratulations, you can be normative too. Questions? Oh, good. All right. Now, GitHub. As you've no doubt noticed, we use GitHub here at HL7 FHIR to do development work and keep track of source code and to build, hook it up to the build engine. This is the standard location you will need to upload. If you're creating an HL7 FHIR IG, you will need to upload it to GitHub. You will need to work with the people there. How many of you have not signed up to GitHub? Good, that was a trick question because none of you could have checked out. That was part of your homework. None of you should have been able to check out the sample IG with, some exclusions, without signing up to GitHub. Once you've done so, to work in the FHIR, you need to send a message to the GitHub username stream on committers. And just list your username so that the FMG knows who you are, can give you appropriate permissions. Of course, those of you who have already in this room have already download, install a Git client for your operating system, and check in, push your current code base into GitHub. Now, that's nice and simple, isn't it? Uh-huh. You may run into an issue here and there. GitHub is wonderful. Git is the best system. It is used for the Linux operating system, core kernel. It is the best software development platform in the universe, except for all the others that have been used. But it's the one we work with. Working with Git can be a challenge. As Lloyd talked about yesterday, if you're working with spreadsheets, Git will try to manage, the changes, but there are limits. So changes to a spreadsheet, because it's stored in XML, GitHub thinks, oh good, I can read this and I can figure out what the differences are. It's horribly wrong. And it will just basically crop up saying, hey, you've got a problem here, you need to resolve it. And the best way to resolve it in that case is find out who made the change and said, so what'd you do? And do it yourself. I'm a big fan of having sole committer access. So if it's a small project and manageable by one person managing it, have people just send you their changes. You commit them, you have source control. Other people can pull and get the latest version, but only you should be able to make changes. This saves all kinds of issues. I know it's not optimal, but there is no optimal source control method. Best thing you can hope for is if you've got a good team, they can manage source code changes well, they will handle it. Pull requests will be managed properly. A pull request means they put a change in, somebody gets to approve it, and everything works well. Yeah. Mostly, if you're working with a core spec, you have to put it in as a change request, a pull request saying what you've changed. GitHub's good. It will automatically merge some changes once you've said yes, go. Some will need manual input, especially depending on the quality of the change. In your IG, you probably don't want to have too many automatic merges because then people change things and you don't know why. Mystery breakages because of uncommunicated changes, because they uploaded changes, they didn't put in comments saying what they changed. It just says file uploaded. Or uploaded minor fixes, and suddenly your build explodes all over the place and you have to hunt that person down and shoot them. don't shoot your co-developers more often than necessary. Start with the legs, work your way up. The nice thing about using Git and GitHub is you can roll back changes. If you make a change, and we'll all do it once in a while, that breaks your build and you pushed it before, you pushed it up and then remembered to test the build, you can roll it back. Or you can put a fix and change in. This is your code base. The biggest thing is always pull the latest version down of the code base, unless you're the only one who maintains it, before you start making changes. It's very important that you don't make conflicting changes because it means more work for you trying to manually fix a break between what you've done and somebody else has done if you've changed the same elements, same resource. It's a pain. We've done this for a few people here. The big thing is working with the continuous integration build. I will look at that. I remembered what it was called today. The CI build is the latest build. This is the one that's done automatically for you. So every time you upload a change to GitHub, it triggers a build and tells you whether or not you're successful. Believe it or not, what happens on the CI build server and what happens locally may not be the same. Sometimes your build won't reach the terminology server, or the terminology server will do something strange and tell you, I can't support this. Then you upload it and find it works fine. I don't know. Or the other way around. Something works beautifully on your system. It builds, and you upload it. And Graham has changed the IG publisher in the intermediate, and it explodes all over your QA HTML on the build engine. So get ready for it. Be prepared. Obviously, when you create your IG, you're creating a new IG in the GitHub folder. You're pushing your content. Yes, Lisa.
Dave, when you say your build doesn't reach the terminology server,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Restate the question.
You're asking me what happens when the build doesn't reach the terminology server. What I mean by that?
I don't even understand.
Okay.
Just unpack that set of words.
Okay.
Tell me what you're
The
actually-
terminology server is the terminology.hl7.org, and this is what handles all HL7 value sets and code systems. When you do a build, if you are referencing an HL7 code system, the IG publisher will reach out to the terminology server and say, hey, somebody's using this, are they using it correctly? And it will validate your code system and value set against that. There will be times when it's, Graham's asleep and the terminology server's gone down and he's not there to give it a kick and nobody else remembers how to do it. So it'll be down for a couple hours and you will get error messages back. There's nothing wrong with your IG, but you got a strange message. Or very simply, the terminology says the actual messages cannot support this value set. I believe that's what I got a few times, but then I pushed it up on the CI build and it worked fine. I'm not sure why that is, but it happened and I stopped worrying about it and learned to love the bomb.
Is it right to say that that is where FHIR value sets live?
Where FHIR code systems live.
Well, it's where everything that we know about FHIR and otherwise that could potentially be referenced in FHIR implementation guides is met. So it includes SNOMED and WOINC and V2 stuff and V3 stuff and stuff from all over the place. Whatever we can get our hands on that is potentially referenced by FHIR stuff, we can put there as a mechanism to validate did we get it right.
Okay.
So that means though that sets like NUBC and CPT, they're proprietary, aren't there?
Proprietary. You're asking if proprietary sets are on the terminology server?
Are not.
Are
like
not.
CPT.
Like CPT?
CPT cannot be.
CPT, yeah. So ones that cannot be on there obviously won't be. They will be, dealt with
And
separately.
if you're using them, you're going to get an error.
No, you won't get an error because you do get an error if you use an external code set? If you use
Sorry.
CPT, okay. Specifically that one, okay.
So I want to say a few things here.
All right.
The terminology server has all of the stuff that's in the core spec and all of the stuff that's in Loink and SNOMED. It's got 6 releases of SNOMED loaded. It's got a whole bunch of other code systems that we add to it additionally to that. It seems likely that I'll be able to figure out this licensing agreement with AMA to get CPT on there, but we just haven't run that to the ground yet. Anything that you define in your implementation guide or is in an implementation guide that you identify as a dependency is known to the mini terminology server that runs inside the IG publisher. And so anything that you define lives there. And the mini terminology server inside the IG publisher looks at your value sets and code systems and does it locally if it can. Otherwise, it passes it out to the main terminology server. So there's some combinations that you could put together that nobody's yet figured out to do, where not all the information, neither of the servers is fully informed about your terminology combination, and neither of them can do the terminology reconciliation. Now that I've said that, Lloyd's going to go and figure out how to make that happen. But nobody has yet done that, so I haven't figured out what to do about it. If you're using codes or terminologies that the terminology system doesn't know about, because you haven't provided them and it doesn't know about them, then your expansions may fail. You may get valid in the QA, and the expansions will fail with an error message in the implementation guide itself. And it will say something like the publication infrastructure can't populate this expansion. And then what happens is a bunch of people will comment saying, well, it should. It's an error that it can't. Well, it can't, right? So you could just go, that's an automatic out of scope, not persuasive, if people complain about the expansions. Otherwise, you'll get a series of errors in the QA.html, but the build itself won't fail because you use terminology that we don't know about. You just might get errors saying this is not a valid code, or we can't validate that this is a valid code, or we can't tell you that your value set is valid because we don't know how to do that. But it will actually publish. And if you are using, I just got a request for an X12 value code system to be loaded. If you're using a code system that you would like us to be able to do expansions and validations on, please let me know. But also, you typically, if you are in that position, you have a reason to be doing that, and you have some connection to the code system maintainer that I probably don't have. And so it would help if you can smooth the discussion. For instance, we're having a nice discussion with X12 right now, which is miraculously going well because it was brought up in the right place. Whereas the AMA discussion for 5 years went nowhere until it was brought up in the right place. It's magic. So do feel free to ask, but also so that the big four it's for a while it was really hard to get anything with SNOMED, but SNOMED are cool now. Well, we can do what we need to do. We are in negotiations with the ISO, WHO, AMA, and X12 right now to get terminology loaded.
Okay.
What?
NEDC?
All right. I'm going to have
too.
to shut this down because we're not going to get into specific cases. No. Just because that's what we're here for.
Replace the VSAC?
I pick up VSAC or value sets automatically. Oh, hang on, no, that's another negotiation. I have the infrastructure to pick up VSAC value sets automatically, but in order for me to do so, I need to provide a username and password. But I can't provide a username and password in an open source tool that runs in open source. So VSAC have to figure out how to actually serve value sets into our framework, which they have they have declined to do at this point. So we could use VSAC value sets directly, which they'd like us to do, but in order for them to do that, for us to do that, they have to let us do that. That's
Okay.
where we are with VSAC.
All right. We have terminology talk this afternoon by somebody like me who's not an expert, but there is a half day tomorrow. So if you have lots of terminology questions, you probably should have signed up for tomorrow morning's terminology discussion. Anyway, once you've got your GitHub set up, once you've uploaded your code, it's time to hook it up to the continuous integration build. Now, it's nice because this has all been done so that that your continuous integration build will happen. Every time you upload a change, the CI build engine goes out, grabs it, builds it, tells you whether it worked or not. You configure a webhook through GitHub, and I'll show you how to do that in the next slide. GitHub will then say, hey, this code has changed. The CI build will reach out, take a copy of all your code, and run it through the IG publisher. Right, all automatically. It may take 2, 3, or depending on your server. I think I saw one take 38 minutes to build. So whatever time it takes to build on your local, it may take a little more or a little less on the build server, depending on how powerful your local system is. Stop using an i5. It's not my problem. This URL is a page of all the IGs and their current build status. It has 2 benefits. One where it has a list. So if you can't get to Zulip for some obscure reason, but can get to that web page, it will show you your QA page. It has a link to the QA page. It has a link to the build output, whether or not it failed. It has a link to the publish site, the build publish output. And it also has a rebuild button. So if you know that the IG publisher has been updated fixing your problem and don't want to go through and do it, you could just push that button and it will automatically tell the CI engine to do a rebuild. Okay, how to add the webhook. Yep. Somebody give her a microphone.
So the sample IG that we worked yesterday, was using that Gen ones. So that's supposed to be used only if you're working locally. So if you want to do with GitHub, you have to do this whole process. Are we going to show how, like how you do this, the instructions, how you do this IG.json, or I'm just trying to see, because I thought the one that was done yesterday was going to be the way forward. So,
Yep.
This whole thing is going to be integrated as well, being added. So if I just need to add this IG.json file to create a new one, add it to the project that was done yesterday.
Yeah, the IG.json is not necessary with the new template-based approach. So it's the challenge of David created his slides on time, like several weeks ago.
And then he created the new
oddly
template.
enough, did not read my mind in terms of what the new template was going to look like. He's definitely falling behind there.
Yeah, my telepathy is really just not working as well as it
Yeah,
used to.
So get used to it. The IG publication process is evolving and will continue to evolve. So you no longer need an IG.json file. You do need an IG.ini file, which you didn't used to need. But yeah, if you drive off of the sample IG, that will do what you need to do, and there is actually instructions there on how to set up your continuous integration build.
Yeah. To set it up, I mean, the biggest thing is adding the webhook to your directory on GitHub, and that is right here. So if you want to open up the GitHub web page yourselves, you can look at it, and those of you who've already got it can actually do this live, or you can just look at the screen. You basically go to the settings, select webhooks, add webhook, and then enter this URL exactly as you see it here. You all have access to this, so you can copy and paste it later. You don't have to try to type that because it's nasty. You choose content type, accept the default empty secret, so you don't set a password so that the CI builder can actually just reach out and grab it. Choose the push event as the trigger, so that you're not asking for a pull event, meaning we're not waiting for the CI build to do yours. Click add webhook and you're done. Nice and quick. Sorry, what?
Where did you start?
Yeah, you have to do a fork first, right?
No, there's no form. This is, once you've created your directory, you can go right into this.
This is on the GitHub
This is on the GitHub website.
website.
Right.
Right, so once you've created your project on GitHub, this is when you start this process. Yes, your project.
Yeah, you do a fork because we were using the sample.
Yeah, don't do this to the sample IG, because that would be nasty.
Plus, you have to have certain permissions, like everybody.
Well, yes, you also have to have been given permission on by the FMG. We covered that earlier, saying give them your GitHub username so that they can give you permissions.
No, but I think that settings is a permission that only if you're an admin or something like that.
Yes, yeah, you can only you have to be the administrator of the site, not just anybody can play with it.
The missing piece is you need to create a repository
Yes.
where your project is going to be.
Right, you have to
When
have
you do
created
that,
your project.
You have admin rights to do the settings
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't
to
get
your own
right.
project.
Right.
So,
Is that what happens when you do the fork?
no, this is not for.
This is not forking, this is creating a whole new project.
For us, because of the way we had to do it, I think this is where she's coming in.
Oh,
We
right,
needed
because,
a
yes,
fork from Lloyd's sample IG.
Yeah.
So that we could bring over, sorry. For the two of us, we created a fork so that we could bring over all of what Lloyd already prepared
Right.
in the sample IG. And we created our own repository on our own Git page.
right, that was specific because of the limitations for you to install the actual IG publisher and run it on your system. But in the future, when you create a new IG and create a new repository for your project, that's when you will go through this process.
It's the same process, it's just that we're not using a shared,
Right.
got
I have an easy question. Has the deck been posted somewhere so we can follow along and get these links as we're going?
it. Yes.
Yes, is the short answer.
This is on a wiki page that tells you how to create an IG.
This deck is on GitHub that I thought we gave
Well,
everybody.
Yeah, we talked about it
Yeah, we-
yesterday, but
Downloaded it yesterday.
at lunch I'll walk you through it.
All right, thank
Yes,
you.
did. Yeah, the deck had all of today's slides. The only thing that was added was there's all 49 slides. Yeah. So you need to go to slide 124 in the deck if you downloaded it yesterday, 126 if you downloaded it today. Numbers are right in front of me. It's nice. Okay. And at that point, I think we're at lunch. We're actually early for lunch. Who would have thought?